Hey there, art nerds! Today we're taking a look at the Roman Szmal Aquarius watercolors. These were purchased on Jackson's. Is the Roman Szmal starter pack of 5 watercolors in their Aquarius lineup, and this was purchased through Jackson's Art Supplies, and I'll have a link for that down in the description below. And this set of 5 pans was available for $15.04, which I thought was a really fair price, as generally Roman Szmal's Aquarius watercolors average around $5 a pan on Jackson's, so it seems like a good deal. And I really appreciate these types of test packs that allow customers to see if a watercolor brand is right for them without a huge investment. This has enabled a lot of the reviews I've been able to share here on the channel and has introduced me to many different brands that I really enjoy and have continued to use over the years. So before we dive too far into this review, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself in case you guys are new here. I'm a watercolor comic artist, and generally when I am reviewing watercolors, it's with that in mind. I don't do fine art watercolors, I do watercolor comics and illustrations. And if you guys are interested in checking out more of my art, you can find me at instagram.com/natosoup. You can also find me on ArtStation, and those links should be somewhere here on YouTube, but I also frequently share art on the community page as well. So if you're interested in getting an idea for the kind of work I make, you can check that out. Or you could read my webcomic at 7inchkara.com. And since it's a webcomic, it is free to read, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. And let me know what you guys think about it. So generally, it's with all that in mind, all those kind of considerations that I keep in mind when I am reviewing watercolors. So I'm looking for the ability to layer, I'm looking for the ability to glaze, I'm looking for the ability to mix colors, I'm looking for colors that don't contain too many optical brighteners. And I'm looking for colors that play well wet into wet and are not too prone to lifting. So it's with that eye that I'm going to be reviewing these Aquarius watercolors today. So this package is shrink wrapped and includes 5 colors from the Aquarius range: lemon yellow, Aquarius red, ultramarine light, Aquarius green, and caput mortuum. And I appreciate that it also includes the pigment information as well. That actually is quite handy. So as I unwrap this, I'll tell you guys what Jackson's has to say about these watercolors. So this starter set is a great introduction. Gotta be careful because I am cutting. I don't want to cut myself. So gotta look at what I'm cutting and not at my notes. This starter set is a great introduction to the Aquarius range, offering a foundational palette for mixing and experimenting. These are made with high quality gum arabic and glycerin, linden honey, distilled water, and pigment. It's produced in small batches that are tested for performance qualities, and they really put a lot of effort into shrink wrapping this because I'm having some difficulty. Don't want to cut the box. Hopefully the paints aren't overwrapped. Produced in small batches that are tested for performance qualities, range contains a selection of unique tones created exclusively by Roman Szmals. Each pan is hand-filled and labeled with watercolor paper, excellent for professionals or beginners. And Jackson's also mentions that these are mostly single pigment paints. 117 out of the 140 color range are monopigment paints, and this helps ensure cleaner mixes, so you're not going to get as many moneyed mixes. Aquarius includes tones made from natural earth pigments, not synthetic, and are exclusive to Roman Szmals, including Aquarius green, which is in this set. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. I love me a good green gold. And this set contains number 204, lemon yellow, which is PY61, Aquarius red, which is PR214, ultramarine light, which is PB29, Aquarius green, which is PY150, PBR25, and PB29, so that is not a monopigment, and caput mortuum, which is PR102. And you know, caput mortuum used to be made from ground up mummies, which is absolutely disrespectful and awful, and I am so glad we're not doing that anymore. I mean, I personally might be okay with that for me personally, but that is a choice that individuals should be able to make for themselves. And I've been watching a lot of Ask a Mortician, and I highly recommend you guys check it out as well. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and dive into this package. So we've got a cardboard sleeve. These were manufactured in Krakow, Poland. And inside the sleeve, y'all, these look so much like Andes mints. These look like I should be eating them. They look delicious, which, y'all, I do not recommend you eat watercolors. But don't these look like candy? They also remind me of the Yarka St. Petersburg watercolors. I own them. I never did a review for you guys on their own, but they were all wrapped in foil as well. You know, sealed for freshness. And it seems like in this set, we have whole pans. And you could continue to reuse this packaging if you want, or you could replace these and put these in the palette of your choice. I think for the time being, I'm gonna leave them in this palette. So they are foil wrapped like little Andes mints with, oh, the packaging is very nice considering. So it says, I don't know if you guys can see it, it says Roman Szmal, and it has RS embossed on it, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, and I'm just killing somebody who's watching this, and I apologize for my atrocious pronunciation. I don't have the best English pronunciation either, so you know, that's to be expected, I guess. And then inside we have a whole pan, and there's a bit of wax paper. And this looks like it would be caput mortuum. And these are not labeled in any other way. These whole pans have kind of a rustic, hand-filled look to them that is by no way, shape, or form unappealing. It definitely has this kind of homemade look, which is nice to see. I can imagine someone scraping off the excess to make sure you get just the right amount of fill. So what I want to do next is I want to go ahead and swatch these. So since we've only got 5 colors to swatch, I'm going to swatch them in this smaller cotton rag watercolor block. You guys have seen me review this in the past, and I find it to be decent quality. I enjoyed painting it, so I have no qualms doing my unbox and swatch on the Bao Hong pure cotton rag watercolor paper. These use a binder of gum arabic and honey, so they should be fairly hydrophilic, which means they should be pretty quick to activate. Now, when I am unboxing and swatching watercolors, there are several traits I'm looking for. I'm looking for opacity, whether or not these watercolors are opaque. I'm looking for a quick activation time without turning too goopy or too soupy. I'm looking for how prone they are to lifting. I'm looking for granulation and staining properties. And later on, depending on how they swatch, I'm also looking at their ability to mix and whether those mixes turn into beautiful colors or turn into mud. So I've gone ahead and I've pre-activated our watercolors. I'll give this just a second, a chance to kind of soak in, and then we'll start swatching. gave these a chance to dry for a little while. They're not entirely dry, but that's okay. That's gonna kind of let us move on to the next part of this. So while swatching these, I noticed that they activated very quickly, very cleanly. It's not like with some watercolor where some of the colors will activate and some of them won't. I hate that. I think y'all probably hate that. They didn't overly muddy the water either. And in the time-lapse section, I talked a little bit about their light fast properties. Now, they also mention, they have some abbreviations that I guess I'm just not familiar with, like MS and G. I assume G is granulating, but they had that on, I'm not sure what MS means, might stain, I don't know. It's a little too ambiguous for me. I'm not used to all that information, but we did talk about that during the time-lapse section. And I noticed that Aquarius green might look kind of familiar to you. It kind of looks familiar to me. It reminds me a lot of Daniel Smith's Undersea Green, which is one of my favorite colors. But all in all, handled pretty well. I'm excited about these. Now, for me, the challenge is going to be doing a field test where I paint an illustration with these because these are not colors I wouldn't have normally mixed. So while these are drying, let's go ahead and move on to some color mixing because since most of these, with the exception of Aquarius Green, all of these are single pigment colors, we should be able to do some really nice color mixing. So we're going to start by setting the stage for our optical mixing since that takes a little bit of time. And I'm just going to do these three colors here. And I'll do it as a little plaid since we're only doing three. So you pick up a good amount of color with each one. Basically, you pick up a mass tone swatch of color if you've pre-activated these. So I can see pros and cons to that, mostly pros. The only cons I can see is that if you're not a full saturation person, and I'm not always a full saturation person myself, you are going to want to work with a palette like a ceramic palette just to help with color control. But if you're a single layer kind of person, these are probably going to be your new best friend. We also get some really lovely granulation with some of the colors, although with our yellow and our red, they're a little bit opaque. Can't quite see granulation with that. Okay, so now I want to try some manual color mixing, and that's when you take, and it's hard for me to get just a little bit, as you guys can see. So we took our yellow and our red, and we get a nice little orange here, kind of a sunny, sunshiny orange. Now I'm going to take yellow and a little bit of our blue, and that should give us kind of an olivey green since we are dealing with a ultramarine. Nice fresh green there, so that's good to see. Now, what I think we're probably not going to get is a good purple, but we'll find out. We'll try this red. The red's a little cool for a good purple. Usually it's difficult to paint or to mix good purples, but we'll try. Okay. So we can get a brick red. Gonna need a lot more ultramarine blue then. Now we're starting to kind of approach a good purple. Ooh, there we go. That's a nice color. And then we also get a little bit of granulation. We get some color freshness as we kind of transition from this blue into the red. Let's see what happens when we mix a little bit of our yellow with our green. This should give us kind of like a sap green. Don't really see, other than maybe slightly darker, maybe slightly greener, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of difference between what you can mix with Aquarius green and what you can mix with ultramarine blue. But you know, doing a field test, painting an illustration with these, that's going to give me a better idea for that. Let's try some of this blue with some of this caput mortuum and see what we get. Ooh, okay. So that kind of functions as our dark brown. It's a really lovely dark brown. Let's try that with the Aquarius green as well. Ooh, that's a pretty color. Kind of like that. So definitely not your standard mixing color selection, but I like some of these choices. Let's try yellow with Caput Mortem. I'm hoping that'll give us maybe kind of a skin tone-esque color. I mean, it's a kind of like a goldenrod color, but not what I was hoping for. Running out of space, but that's okay. And then if we added a little bit of blue, what would that give us? Oh, that's pretty. You could definitely get some grays with that. So this set, just as it is, might make an excellent take along for my plein air friends, because you can actually mix a lot of colors with just these 5, and you do get full pans, which is often a little bit easier to get your brush into when you're traveling. And this isn't such a large form factor. You can definitely condense this down if you want to, but it's not such a large form factor that it would kind of get in the way of your travels. And you can mix some really beautiful colors. I could also see some of my botanical painter friends, at least for some of the greens, really enjoying this set. But this is a tester set. It's just designed to kind of get you interested in these paints, in these colors, and it's definitely done that. So here's a fun fact about me that you probably know if you've listened long enough or if you've watched any of the vlogs, but I am currently living in Southeast Louisiana, which is where I was originally from, but for a while I lived in Nashville. And this is relevant because Southeast Louisiana is a very humid place. And I have a whole house dehumidifier running that I'm sure you guys can hear in the background, and the AC going. So sometimes it just takes a while to dry. And I mention this because I've got a lot of friends who live in humid places like Florida and like parts of South America. And years ago, I attended a workshop that was taught in Nashville by somebody who taught watercolor at LSU. And I asked him if buying a dehumidifier would help with the dry times. And he looked at me like I'd grown a third eye. And, you know, it really bugged me because I am a watercolor comic artist and the ability to paint quickly is important. So, you know, I mention it because I know it does actually affect dry time. So for example, with this optical mixing test here, they looked dry. I had the fan on. I waited 30 minutes, but I guess they weren't fully dry and some of the colors reactivated. Is that a flaw with the watercolors? No, it's a flaw with the environment. Though we do get some pretty colors over here and some pretty blowback. But it does look like you can layer them layer them optically, mix them optically, because what we're doing when we mix our colors together manually on a palette, that's manual mixing. When we're layering, when we're glazing colors, that's optical mixing. And I like to see watercolors that can do both. I like to see watercolors that can do it all. And typically cheaper student grade watercolors don't handle this one so well. Of course, the Roman Szmal Aquarius watercolors are not listed as being student grade, but one of my complaints here as an art supply buyer and reviewer here in the US is that sometimes student grade stuff isn't sold as student grade stuff. It's sold as professional grade stuff. And then you find out it's student grade when you can't get it to do what you want it to do. So from what I'm seeing here, from what I've read online, these are professional watercolors. I would say they're very fairly priced professional watercolors, but I'm going to give these a chance to dry. I'm going to do a little bit more research and I'll get right back. Now that these have had a chance to dry, it is time to do the lift test. Now I am using a standard synthetic watercolor brush. Pretty typical for what I use for the lift test. This is still wet, even though it's been, you know, another 30 minutes. And it does look like these might be a little bit prone to lifting. They do stain, so you're not gonna get it like back to paper white. And I am so curious about the pigments in Aquarius Green compared to Daniel Smith Undersea Green that I'm gonna look into that and get back to you guys and let y'all know if they're the same. But what I was doing was I was actually looking up the price for the whole pans. And the full pans are really very reasonably priced, from around $341-ish to $529-ish. Of course, depending on the pigments, depending on the color, with most hovering around $450. And compared to watercolor generally popular in the US, like Winsor and Newton, this is very inexpensive, especially for professional quality watercolor. So Aquarius Green is not the same as Undersea Green. Aquarius Green is PY150, PBR25, and PB29. Whereas Undersea Green is PB29, so that's the same, PO48 and PY150. So there are two pigments in common between Aquarius Green and Undersea Green, with the difference between being an orange pigment and a brown pigment. Quite affordable, saturated color, somewhat lifting, easy to mix. Roman Szmal's test set of Aquarius watercolors has me convinced that I need to try more. While I enjoy the color selection and feel it'd be great for urban sketching, I'll definitely need a few more colors up my sleeve if I hope to do a proper field test. So with that, my verdict is still fairly inconclusive, and I hope you guys will join me for the upcoming field test. I hope you guys will keep an eye out for the upcoming field test for these Aquarius watercolors. I really liked what I saw, but I am going to have to order a few more colors to make this field test possible, and some of the colors I want to order are out of stock on Jackson's right now. So I can't tell you when the field test will be available, just that it will be available at some point in the future, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it, because I sure am. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Unbox and Swatch review. I'm really glad I had the opportunity to try out these watercolors. If you guys enjoy reviews like this one, if you find them helpful, useful, and informative, it would really mean a lot if you subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification if you guys are new around here. If there was one particular aspect you guys liked about this review, let me know down in the comments below, or if you just enjoyed this review in general, leave me a big ol' thumbs up. And if you enjoy these types of reviews and you want to help make them possible in the future, I purchase 99% of what I review here on the channel using funds raised from my Patreon. So it is only with their help and support that I'm able to continue to do these reviews. So if you enjoy what I do and you want to help me continue to do it, you guys can join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup. Not only will you get your name in the credits as a big thank you, just to show a little bit of how much I appreciate what you guys do for me, but I also regularly share free line arts and coloring printables to my patrons, as well as the materials I generate for the classes I teach. So if you're interested in taking some basically free art classes online, you might want to join me on Patreon as well. I also share the majority of the tutorials that I create on Patreon as a Patreon exclusive. So if you guys are looking to learn, it's only $2 a month, and it helps me keep this channel going. Huge, huge, huge thank you to all of my amazing, fantastic patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support and encouragement. It really means a lot to me.